Okay, who here wants COVID to be over? I know I certainly do. I'm willing to bet a lot of you guys do as well. As this pandemic has dragged on and on and on, I can't help but think of all the things that have changed since before coronavirus started. Before we knew about this pandemic, we could travel, see lots of people, play sports, and we didn't have to wear masks or social distance. And so it's during this period of being nostalgic and reminiscing that I think about how many of those things I took for granted. I never imagined there'd be a global pandemic in my lifetime. I bet a lot of you guys didn't either. And so I thought about it a little bit more and realized how many other things I take for granted. One of these is money. Because we live in a first world country, the majority of us don't have to worry about where our next meal might come from or how much we're spending on necessities like food. But maybe that's just because I'm not the one paying the grocery bills. However, millions of people don't have these luxuries and live in poverty. For example, 9.2% of the world's population, the entire world's population, lives on less than $2 a day. For them, money is a serious issue, and poverty is a problem that needs to be fixed. In theory, everybody should have equal opportunities. It's common sense. We're all humans on the same planet, but due to poverty and wealth inequality, this doesn't happen. In fact, poverty levels in the United States have risen very sharply in recent decades. Okay, let's start off by looking at poverty levels all over the world. Like I said earlier, 9.2% of the world's population, or 689 million people, live on less than $2 a day. Think about that. Also, children and teenagers our age make up for 2/3 of the world's poor population. And 1.3 billion people live in multidimensional poverty. This is poverty with a lot of layers, and it's very hard to get out of. Now, let's look a little closer to home and focus on poverty in the US. As you can probably realize, it's not much better. 11.8% of the US population lives in poverty. Also, 84% of families live below the average wealth level. And as you can probably guess by now, it's very racially tied. The average white American family has about $171,000. Seems like a good amount, right? Okay, the average African American family has about $17,000. Average Latino family has about $21,000. And other minorities have about $65,000. I want you to think about that as well. The average white American family has about $137,000 more dollars than the average minority family. That's a lot. Also, a study showed that if women in Pennsylvania were paid the same as comparable men, their poverty rate would split in half, from 7.2% down to 3.6%. Part of the reason why poverty is such a big issue is because of the terrible effects that it can have on human lives. For example, in many impoverished areas, sanitary conditions there are really bad. And I mean really bad. Just look at this. Then, as a result of that, many people get sick and can't afford to pay their hospital bills or buy the medicine that they might need to get better. Also, studies have shown that children, in an attempt to support their families, turn to child labor by the age of 6. And some people even turn to terrorism out of desperation. That's how bad this problem is. Also, researchers found that poor, malnourished children are often 9 months behind their peers in terms of growth and development. However, there are some lights in this darkness. People use their resources and money to provide food, water, sanitary conditions, and education to poor communities. Here's how you can help. You can go to a site like Food for the Poor, which donates food and water to poor children, or sponsor a child through World Vision, which gives them access and education that they wouldn't otherwise get. Or just spread awareness on social media. Anything you do helps to solve this problem. At the beginning of this talk, I talked about taking things for granted. And if you take one thing away from this speech, make sure to always remember that you are extremely privileged. You may not think so, but compared to millions of other children, you are. So next time, don't complain when you don't get something you want, because those things that you take for granted, somebody else is praying for. Thank you.